feel like you don't have enough hours in the day? Do you ever wonder how you're going to meet your deadlines? And how do you maintain quality when overwhelmed with the quantity of work? The answer to these questions is often time management. Time management is the key to success, yet often the most difficult aspect of our lives to get under control, much less master. In today's society, we're crammed with tasks, relationships to upkeep, etc., and we feel like we have to do it all. Saying no rarely seems like an option, especially when freelancing. I'm Dawson Sorensen, and in this workshop, we're going to identify some causes for these behaviors and feelings, as well as some time management strategies for how to address these struggles. Looking at time management as behavior and lifestyle rather than as another task to add to our ever-growing to-do lists is key to success here. Listening to this webinar and seeking to improve your time management skills should be empowering, not stressful. It should be freeing because it frees us up to achieve not only our goals, but that much desired work-life balance that we all seek to strive for, and that often seems far beyond our reach. Let's begin with some reflection. What are some of the things that you're most prone to? Why are you watching this video on time management? Click on the link below this video and select all that apply. I need time management because I tend to waste time, have low productivity, experience stress in trying to achieve everything on my to-do list, provide low quality work, or have you gained a reputation for all of the above? First, let's take a look at multitasking. This word and concept has permeated both home and work in American society. It's become a badge of honor. How high of a multitasker are you? How many things can you do at once? Multitasking is how we are our very most productive, is it not? It has become an oft-thought mark of skill and competence. But let's take a deeper look at multitasking. Multitasking comes into the English language through computer processing. It describes how computers and machines run processes parallel and simultaneous to one another. We then took the word and applied it to human behavior, except that there is a distinct difference in how humans process their world. Multitasking does not properly represent how human minds work. So, let's take a look at what multitasking is not. Here are some common myths of multitasking. The first is that women are better multitaskers than men. This is false. Studies have shown that there are no substantial differences in performance between genders. The second myth that often comes up is that multitasking saves time. But in fact, experts estimate that the lost time that occurring while multitasking creates a 40% loss in overall productivity. That's a lot. But perhaps one of the most common pervasive myths is that each individual is awesome at multitasking. Well, for those of you that say, I am awesome at multitasking, I have bad news. Evidence has shown that those of us who profess themselves to be experts are actually some of the poorest performers. Our brains actually deceive us into thinking we are doing it well. Research has shown that handling two complicated tasks at the same time is manageable, but anything more and it overwhelms the brain, causing mistakes, or even fully ignoring one of the three tasks, anything more than two, because the brain only focuses on two in any given time. So I just love this picture here, your brain and your brain on multitasking, right? Every time you focus on just one task, your brain gives it 100%. That's 100% of your energy, 100% of your creativity, 100% of your focus. But when we have two tasks, what actually happens is not that you are able to do two tasks 50 and 50, but rather that our brain actually only uses a very small percentage of its of itself to focus on each task, and we end up with a lot of wasted brain power. And when you throw in a third and fourth task, the research shows that we don't actually even process that third task. We actually kick out one of the other two tasks to replace it with the third task. So there are ever only two tasks really being processed at any given time. Okay, so what is multitasking then for humans? Multitasking is not doing various things simultaneously. It's actually just toggling or switching between various things. Your brain is actually constantly ordering and prioritizing the tasks at hand. Multitasking then slows us down due to all the time that is lost in transitioning our thinking processes and focus. Don't believe me? Take the test that you'll find in the link below this video. It is very insightful for those of us that think we are pretty awesome at multitasking. Okay. There are those of you who are disagreeing with me right now. But Jocelyn, I multitask all the time. I listen to music while reading. I peel potatoes while watching TV. I make phone calls while driving. I hear you. I do those things too. However, let's break down what kind of activities it is that we're really talking about. Let's take the driving while calling example. Driving becomes second nature after much time behind the wheel. There are even times when drivers are on autopilot, sometimes not even remembering the drive home from work because it's so routine, because we do it every single day. Not much attention is needed for this task. Having a casual conversation on the phone is also pretty routine. Deciding between chicken and beef for dinner, or telling your child that you're only 10 minutes away from the school, for example, also pretty routine. But let's change some elements here. Let's say that the conversation is about a complex problem with several moving parts. Maybe you're trying to decide how to best market something, or maybe you're trying to decide how best to solve a complex math equation when you have multiple strategies at hand. Now you're driving down a windy mountain road in the pouring rain with little visibility. How's that multitasking coming along? In the second scenario, you end the conversation. You shift your focus to driving to make sure that you do not veer off the cliff. The car maybe becomes silent, right? Maybe you turn down that music you had been listening to. And perhaps even under certain conditions, everyone becomes a little bit tense until you pass into safety. Now, what really changed here? What changed is that you went from two highly practiced skills to action planning or strategic skills. Action planning skills are those that require our attention and critical thought. You are creating something new. They're highly practiced skills, and perception of surroundings can be done simultaneously. This is also called procedural memory, and we also think of it as muscle memory. It's the kind of task being undertaken that really matters in one's ability to quote-unquote multitask. Listening to music while grading papers, or for students while doing their homework, for example, is another common example. Have you noticed that you prefer quiet more often than before when you are working on a project instead of music playing in the background? Well, research tells us that our ability to tune out the lyrics of a song gets more difficult with age. I myself have noticed that my ability to have music loud in the background has diminished just in the last 10 years. So, do you identify as a heavy multitasker? Well, there's a health warning for you. Psychology professor at UCLA, Russell Poldrak, warns that multitasking releases adrenaline and stress hormones, which can cause short-term memory loss in the long term. This is additional wear and tear on the body, and yet another reason for changing your lifestyle and behavioral patterns to work towards better time management. So as we move forward, we're going to look at some common causes of poor time management. We're going to cover interruptions, poor organization, unreasonable expectations, distractions, and the lack of the right tools for the job. So we're going to start with interruptions. How often do people pop into our office space asking for our attention for quote unquote just 1 minute? Now, how often does their request really just take 1 minute? Reality check. Usually 1 minute means 15. And in addition, it results in an entirely new task. Not only is this a real amount of time, an imposition on our focus and our time management, but the time it takes to regain focus on the original task is a surprising burden. This time of refocusing is called the readjustment period. Research at the University of California, Irvine found that interruptions among office workers required a 25-minute readjustment period. That's 25 minutes of wasted time for a single interruption. Take a moment to let that sink in and start to add up how much time is actually lost to small interruptions. Now, how can we ward against this time waster? The comic to the right points us to a strategy that seems pretty extreme and pretty abrasive. Well, we don't have to get razor wire and guard dogs to communicate healthy boundaries for productivity. Some healthy strategies for reducing the amount of time that interruptions impose on us is to stand up to greet whoever comes into your working space. Don't remain seated and don't invite them to sit. This formalizes the interaction. Sitting is comfortable and it's easy to get distracted and allow for the conversation to linger or to move on to entirely new topics in addition to the original interruption. Also, state the amount of time that you're willing to give to a certain request. Be clear. Say to them, yes, I can talk with you about that for 5 minutes, no problem, but only for 5 minutes. Also, have a plan for if that goes past the allotted time, right? Prepare and practice this strategy. For example, you could say, if a meeting has gone on more than the 5 allotted minutes, this subject needs more time. Let's schedule a time to meet later. Please email me with your availability and a reminder of this conversation. This can also be a good strategy for if you don't want to give time at the moment of the interruption. You can say something very similar, like, that sounds like something worth discussing. I don't have the time or space at the moment, but email me to set up a time to discuss this topic. This is a great way to be clear with your boundaries, but to also allow for flexibility and discussion among colleagues. Another strategy to create a physical boundary is to just shut your door. It's amazing how often people will choose to wait to interrupt you when the door is shut versus when your door is open. A well-placed sign can also be a good strategy. A very polite sign, such as "Do not disturb" or "Working in progress, please come back later," can be a very helpful clue for those whose interruptions are not exactly important. Another cause for poor time management is poor organization. Have you ever forgotten a deadline because it wasn't placed on a calendar? Do projects take longer because you're not sure what the next steps are? Take a page from the book of those who do time management well and set aside some time to organize. Proper planning not only guarantees a good outcome, but also helps the project move along more quickly, as there is little to no confusion about what is to be done next or who is in charge of it. Let's go over some ways to build organization into your professional life. What can you do to keep all of your appointments, meetings, projects, and teaching preparation manageable? Well, first of all, I suggest learning how to integrate your various calendars. Having things in just one place reduces the chance that tasks, meetings, and deadlines will fall through the cracks. In addition, keep detailed info on your calendar, such as the start and end times of various meetings and projects that you work on, and the times that you work on those projects, the various topics that you, as well as the names of pertinent people to the calendar entries, such as the person who assigned a certain task to you. All of this is very useful for later reference when we fill out our time cards, for example, at Westcliff. I also encourage the use of color coding options if this is something that that strikes you. Each person is different with the use of colors, but all the calendar options that we have nowadays give us options to code things in various colors. You can assign a certain color to a certain project or a certain type of task, and you do that to add more organization. I also highly suggest that you clean up your computer desktop. So here is a little look at my desktop. I've cluttered it up for us today. I'm working on a couple projects. One of this is the webinar that you're currently listening to, right? So you see some of the images that I've just put here on the desktop. And I also have a photo project going on. But I've seen many computer desktops that look, if not like this, then significantly worse than this, right? Where we just throw everything onto the desktop and then search for it desperately later. What I suggest to cut down on some of that lost time looking for things is to create folders at the very least. If you're not going to store it inside the documents, at least create folders. So, for example, I have a photo album that I am creating. So I create the folder photo album and I proceed to drop all the photos into the photo album. And then I find later when I go to print, it's all in one place. And I do not have to go searching for which images are part of the photo album project and which are part of the webinar. But so I would also create one for the webinar and then drop all the images into that as well. In addition, you find, oh look, I have a roster that I created for the Faculty Senate. I have something related to a committee, and I have meeting minutes. So, for example, the things on my desktop are related to Westcliff. And so I can go and drop all of these things into there. And so if I know that I want to do something regarding Westcliff, it's all in one place, and I just pull it up quite quickly. Consistency here is key. Putting things on the calendar and cleaning up the desktop need to become a habit. Putting the details does not take very long and will save you a lot of time later if you find yourself trying to reconstruct your days and time spent working. Take the time up front to record and organize information. Lists are also a great way to start organizing. Keep lists in your phone, on sticky notes, or in a notebook, whatever works for you. To keep yourself motivated and moving towards your goals, I highly recommend planning out your tasks for the week, making a list of 3 tasks per day. As you move through your day and week, hesitate to take on anything in addition to those tasks. Prioritize them and don't be distracted from them. It is the daily completion of tasks that will help you reach your deadlines without panic and crisis. I like to create my list of 3 must-do todays. Anything else falls under my superstar list. I'm a superstar if I go above and beyond the things that I need to get done and can give myself a much-deserved pat on the back. Prioritization is also an essential task in the organizational process. Is this task mission critical? Is it important? Or is it just optional? Each time something new is asked of you, take a moment to evaluate its priority. Only add things to your list that actually assist you in achieving your goals. Something to note here is that you are not always subject to another person's needs. Their emergency is not necessarily your emergency. Urgency is often the result of poor planning and poor communication. Communication and healthy boundaries are essential for maintaining a balanced schedule. If you are given additional tasks while still working on a set of projects, take a moment and ask which takes priority. Express your need for additional time if necessary. Email can also be an organizational bear. Don't let a crowded and busy email box overwhelm you. Take a few moments and think about how you use email. Set up your inbox to break up emails according to groups. For example, here is a quick look at my email box. I have set up my Gmail using settings and creating under inbox. In the inbox type, you create priority inbox. And Gmail actually allows you to create up to 4 different categories of emails. So I've set up mine to have the first section be all of my unread emails right there at the top for me to see. Next, there's all of the to-do emails that I've labeled, followed by all the emails for the committee I'm on, and then the everything else category. Now, this works as long as you're consistently labeling and archiving your emails so that they don't become overwhelming. What I like about the priority email box is your ability to collapse the different categories. So, for example, I don't need to see anything for my committee right now because I've taken care of it all. For everything else, I like to go through it on a consistent basis and make sure it's cleaned up. So you've seen that I've used some of the labels to mark some of the emails. So, I would ask myself, why haven't I archived these yet? Because they're done, they're labeled, and they have no business in my inbox. They're just creating clutter. An example of how to use the labels here in Gmail is, so I've been getting a lot of emails regarding athletes, for example. So I click on the email, and then I go up here to labels, and I don't currently have a label for athletes, but I can create a new one. Create a new athletes. And I can choose to nest it under a certain one. I don't need to at the moment. It can stand on its own. Create the label. And then later, when I have many emails under athletes, it's easier for me to search. So if I search for label athletes, then it's going to pull up all the emails that I've labeled athletes. So that's just a quick look at how you could possibly organize your email box. Unreasonable expectations are another source of poor time management. We all like to think that we are superhuman, that we can take on all the projects and be on all the committees and teach all the classes, and do it well. The reality is that we often have more limitations than we're aware of. Our ability to juggle projects and tasks is influenced by our own life dynamics. What else do you have to balance with work? Be realistic about what you can accomplish and the time it will take you to accomplish it. Be realistic about time allotments. If you know from experience that preparing PowerPoint slides and notes for a course takes more than 3 hours a week, then plan accordingly. Don't wait until the afternoon of the course to do this task with the risk that you will not meet the deadline when the class starts, thinking that you will magically accomplish your task in 1.5 hours. Be aware of time as you move through projects and tasks is a good way to train yourself to allocate appropriate time slots. Note the time when you begin and end a task. How long did it take? Have reasonable expectations. Don't overcommit. It's okay to say no when appropriate because it's so easy to spread ourselves thin. In doing so, be sure to stagger your deadlines if possible. It's easier to work towards deadlines and stay motivated when tangible ends are in sight. It's too easy to procrastinate when all the deadlines are far off in the distance. Create reasonable and obtainable goals. Are you writing a proposal, conference paper, or dissertation? Try writing a page a day. Plan 1 hour a day during your peak concentration time to write 1 page. Keeping your goals obtainable is key to sustained motivation. Do you find yourself consistently not achieving your goals? Well, stop the madness and just adjust your goals. Scheduling is a practical way to exercise organization, reasonable expectations, focus, as well as warding off distractions. schedule meetings, for example, back to back to prevent other things from distracting in between. Always set an end time for a meeting. Is getting going in the morning difficult for you? Try scheduling a meeting first thing to motivate you to get up and out of bed. Back-to-back meetings or meetings with defined end times create an environment where everyone remains focused and on the planned agenda, are on point in discussions, and where tolerance for unrelated content is low. Objectives remain clear, as do assigned tasks. Distractions are another cause of poor time management that have been alluded to. They're also very much related to interruptions. There are a myriad of distractions in life, but perhaps what has become the greatest distraction for many of us is technology. Technology is one of our greatest tools, but it is that, a tool, and it is for you to control. It should not control you. How is our smartphone distracting us? Probably to varying degrees for each individual, but the reality of constant connectivity can be distracting in and of itself. How many times have you checked your phone during this workshop? Have you wondered to yourself what you might have missed in the last few minutes? I have a few suggestions for managing the distractions of connectivity. The first is to place your phone in a drawer, out of sight while working on a project. Keep your phone in your bag during meetings, not on the table in front of you. And notice then how much more engaged you are in your project or in your meeting. A second suggestion is to turn off audible notifications for email accounts. Every ding or bell letting you know that an email has arrived pulls your brain from its current task. Notifications can also build anxiety and stress. Turn these off. Very few people need to reply to emails within an hour. Instead, set aside specific times of day that you read and respond to emails. Set a time limit for this activity. It's too easy to become a slave to email, which is an unproductive use of your time. Are you distracted by random thoughts that run through your head? Do you suddenly remember things you were supposed to do? These pop-ups are very distracting. Don't let them derail your current task. Find a way to track them for later. For example, keep a notepad or sticky notes handy to jot things down to return to later. If you are purely digital at this point, find an app that allows you to quickly note thoughts to revisit later. Voice memos are useful here, or a reminder app. As we walked through some of the causes of poor time management, you may have noticed that there are tools that assist in these lifestyle changes that make good time management possible. Lacking the proper tools is itself a cause of poor time management. Now, this is the tricky part. Finding the tools that work is not the same for everyone. For those of us who are Luddites, a paper calendar is the way to go. For others, Google Calendar or iCal. Don't give up if a particular tool doesn't work for you. Try a different one until you find what does. I'm going to outline a number of useful tools for you here, but please know that they are just a sampling of what's out there. I've chosen those that are commonly used and what has been proven helpful for many. Do you struggle to keep a schedule? Have a clock in sight while working and during meetings. Being visually aware of the time can assist in training you to refocus. Do you get lost in a task? Have a hard time maintaining a schedule because your sense of time is absent? Set a series of alarms to notify you when your time is nearly up and when it's time to move on to the next task. File systems are an excellent tool for organization and time management. Having your files organized cuts down on the time spent searching for information. A file system also allows for documents to be stored for later use. You don't have to recreate the wheel every time a task comes up. Is there a class you usually teach? Spend time investing in handouts and PowerPoint slides, lesson plans, and lecture notes now. Keep everything you create and gather as you research, even if you don't use it right away. I suggest creating a resources folder for all those things. Create a central location for all your courses and another for all your projects. Do you have handouts? Why not print the original on cardstock so that it will not be given away accidentally when passing out copies? The time invested here in these small things will help save a lot of time and energy in the future. The proper location can also be another kind of tool. Where do you work best? Find your spot and schedule it, and then stick to the schedule. If you need quiet, maybe don't choose a coffee shop as your location. I'm attaching a document here outlining several great apps for task management that include aspects of time management as well. But in conclusion, I'd like to end by some ideas for encouragement in this process. After this webinar, you're not going to magically have great time management. It's a lifestyle change, and it will take time. So, some ways to encourage yourself are to create incentives for yourself. Make a reward system if that's what works for you. In the absence of clear deadlines, create some. Maybe apply to a conference in order to get you going on writing that paper. Another way to encourage yourself is to maintain a list of accomplished tasks. You did in fact do something. Just because it's off the list doesn't mean that it's gone completely. It's there and you did it. In conclusion, we just want to look at some benefits of time management, right? We see stress relief. We get more time, and thus we have more opportunities. So now that you've committed to become a master of time management, don't forget to also help your students manage their time well. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope that you have a great 2019 working on time management.